Shaquille was born in 1972. I was 17 years old. I was not married. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal. That means little warrior. Now, he was little then, maybe not so little right now, but that name meant something to me, and I always believed that he would grow into the meaning of that name.
We are excited to have Shaq's Big Chicken in Kansas City, because can't none of y'all see. And to do the official opening, we are proud to welcome to Kansas City, Brother Shaquille O'Neal. Thank you. If you want to share some words with them.
Have you ever been judged based on the way you look? Imagine walking into a place where everything about you seems wrong and you're rejected before you even get a chance. Well, that's exactly what happened to basketball legend Shaquille O'Neal at a luxurious hotel.
And now, for the Western Conference, a 15-time All-Star, center and one of the most dominant players in the history of the NBA, from your Phoenix Suns, the Big Shaqtus himself, Shaquille O'Neal.
But what happens next will shock you, because this story isn't just about a man getting turned away, it's about using power, influence, and fairness to make a lasting change. Join us as we dive into Shaq's incredible journey to transform the Royal Beacon Hotel, where the spotlight shifts from exclusivity to inclusivity. How did one moment of bias spark an unexpected revolution? Stick around as we unravel the truth behind this powerful story of redemption, growth, and the real meaning of leadership. Ready to see change in action? Let's unravel the story. On a cool autumn evening, the Royal Beacon Hotel radiated an air of elegance and exclusivity. The lobby shimmered under the glow of its soft lighting, with polished marble floors reflecting the refined atmosphere. Guests dressed in tailored suits and luxurious designer gowns moved gracefully through the space, engaging in hushed conversations that added to the sophisticated ambiance. Behind the grand reception desk stood Marissa, a young and diligent receptionist who took great pride in her role. She considered herself an expert at maintaining the hotel's elite standards, confident in her ability to recognize the right kind of guest from the moment they entered. To her, the ability to assess someone's status and suitability was almost an art. As the hands of the clock neared midnight, the quiet elegance of the lobby was interrupted. A tall, broad-shouldered black man stepped through the doors. His casual attire, a plain hoodie and jeans, stood in stark contrast to the formal high-end fashion surrounding him. He walked in calming, drawing the attention of both staff and guests alike. Marissa's eyes immediately fixated on him, her practiced instincts taking over. Judging by his appearance, she quickly concluded he didn't belong among the hotel's elite clientele. What followed would reveal much about the perceptions, biases, and values that the Royal Beacon held dear, and how one night could change everything. The man's face carried an air of friendliness, yet it was shadowed by signs of weariness, as though he had been traveling for quite some time. He made his way to the front desk with a steady, deliberate stride. Behind the desk, Marissa straightened her posture, her professional smile faltering for a split second before shifting into something more polite but noticeably cautious. Her eyes subtly scanned him from head to toe, taking in his plain hoodie and jeans, clothing that starkly contrasted with the refined attire of their typical guests. This wasn't how people who frequented the Royal Beacon usually presented themselves, and she couldn't help but let her assumptions take hold. "Good evening," he greeted in a calm, steady tone, his deep voice carrying a warmth that seemed to soften the space around him. His words were unhurried, his demeanor confident but not overbearing. As he spoke, he leaned forward slightly, extending his arm to offer a credit card. Standing well over 6 feet tall, his towering frame and distinctive presence were impossible to ignore. His posture was poised and self-assured, yet Marissa's gaze lingered on his casual outfit, her focus fixed on what she perceived to be the wrong kind of look. Despite his commanding presence and the quiet authority in his voice, her instincts leaned towards skepticism, shaped by her expectations of who belonged in such a luxurious setting. This brief exchange was enough for Marissa to silently question whether he fit the image of the Royal Beacon's prestigious clientele. Unbeknownst to her, This interaction would soon challenge the very assumptions she held so tightly. Marissa cast a quick glance at the reservations list. It was glaringly clear that there were more than enough rooms available for the night, plenty in fact. Yet as she looked back at the man standing before her, a sense of unease crept in. He didn't match her vision of the kind of guest that belonged at the Royal Beacon. Ignoring the facts in front of her, she forced a tight, unconvincing smile. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone crisp and practiced. "We're fully booked for the night." The man's eyebrows knitted together in confusion. His eyes briefly swept across the quiet lobby, where empty tables and unoccupied chairs told a different story. The atmosphere was far from bustling, a clear indication that the hotel was anything but full. "Are you certain?" he asked softly, his tone calm but laced with subtle disbelief. "I'm happy to pay whatever the rate is." Marissa straightened her posture and crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "I'm sorry, sir," she repeated, her voice firm and unyielding. "There's nothing I can do for you. Perhaps you could try another hotel." Before the man could respond, the entrance doors swung open and a couple stepped inside. They were dressed impeccably, exuding an air of wealth and sophistication. Marissa's entire demeanor shifted in an instant. Her guarded expression melted into a genuine smile, her voice warm and welcoming. "Good evening. Welcome to the Royal Beacon," she greeted them, her tone brimming with enthusiasm. Within moments, she had retrieved a room key for the couple, handing it to them with an effortless charm. There was no hesitation, no second thought. It was as if the man standing nearby had vanished completely from her awareness, his earlier request dismissed as though it had never happened. The man observed the interaction in silence, his expression unreadable. The contrast in treatment was undeniable, a reflection of unspoken judgments and ingrained biases. This seemingly routine moment in the lobby was anything but ordinary. It was a glimpse into the values the Royal Beacon upheld, and the quiet stories they chose to tell through actions rather than words. The tall man stood silently for a moment, his disappointment evident in the flicker of emotion that passed through his eyes. It was no accident, no misunderstanding. This was bias, plain and simple. He let out a quiet sigh, nodding to himself as if coming to terms with the situation. Though anger simmered beneath the surface, he kept his composure. "Thank you," he said in a calm, restrained voice, his tone polite but carrying the weight of what had just transpired. Without another word, he turned and walked out into the crisp autumn night. The cold air bit at his skin as he stepped outside, forcing him to take a deep, grounding breath. To the world, he may have appeared to be just another traveler rejected by an exclusive hotel, but he was far from ordinary. This man was Shaquille "Big Shaq" O'Neal.
He is one of the greatest to have ever played the game of basketball. Shaquille O'Neal, the 7'1" powerhouse storming through the NBA.
An internationally celebrated basketball legend, a household name known for his towering presence on and off the court. Beyond his fame as an athlete, Shaq was also a shrewd businessman and a highly successful entrepreneur with an impressive portfolio of investments, including properties and businesses around the globe. The Royal Beacon Hotel had been on his radar for months as a potential acquisition. Its parent company had been facing financial struggles, and Shaq had been considering an investment. However, the events of the night had made his decision crystal clear. What had started as a tentative business opportunity was now a mission. That same night, Shaq began making calls. He reached out to his financial advisor and legal team, his mind racing with determination. This was no longer just a business move, it was personal. By the time dawn broke, Shaq's team had worked tirelessly to finalize the deal. The Royal Beacon Hotel now belonged to him, its fate tied to a man who understood the sting of rejection and the power of change. As the sun rose, Shaq found himself sitting in a quiet cafe, sipping coffee and reviewing the hotel's staff files and policies. His mind kept circling back to the events of the previous night, the dismissal, the subtle yet cutting rejection, and the clear need for a shift in the hotel's culture. He wasn't interested in revenge, he was focused on transformation. This wasn't just about owning a hotel, it was about creating a space where everyone, regardless of how they looked or dressed, would be treated with respect and dignity. With each passing moment, Shaq's resolve deepened. The Royal Beacon Hotel was about to become a symbol of change, led by a man who understood what it meant to rise above and turn challenges into opportunities. The dismissive tone from the night before still echoed in his mind. It wasn't the first time Shaq had encountered prejudice, but this time felt different. This time, he had the power to set things right. By midday, Shaq arrived at the Royal Beacon Hotel once again. This time, he wasn't in casual clothes, but dressed in a sharp, custom-tailored suit that accentuated his commanding presence. His confident stride, combined with his towering height, drew immediate attention. Conversations hushed, and heads turned as he made his way through the grand lobby. Inside, the staff went about their usual tasks, but an undercurrent of tension rippled through the air as they recognized the man from the previous night. While many didn't know the full story, there was an undeniable shift in the atmosphere. Marissa was at her station when she spotted him. Her heart skipped a beat, and her face paled as the memory of their encounter flashed before her. She had dismissed him so easily, certain she'd never see him again. Now he looked entirely different, more commanding, more polished, and undeniably influential. The impeccably tailored suit transformed him into the very image of the elite clientele she prided herself on serving. Her nervousness was hard to hide as he approached the desk. Forcing a smile, she greeted him with a voice that wavered slightly. "Good afternoon, sir. How can I assist you today?" Shaq stopped in front of her, his calm demeanor exuding quiet authority. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, the weight of the previous night seemed to hang in the air. Yet there was no anger in his gaze, only a steady and resolute kindness. "I'm here to introduce myself," he said, his voice steady, deep, and measured. "My name is Shaquille O'Neal, and from now on, as of this morning, I am the new owner of the Royal Beacon Hotel." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Marissa's forced smile faltered as the realization sank in. Her pulse quickened, and she struggled to compose herself under his calm but piercing gaze. The staff nearby exchanged stunned glances, whispering among themselves. Shaq's presence was no longer just imposing, it was transformative. His decision to return wasn't about revenge, but about setting an example. With those few words, he had turned the tables, reclaiming the respect and dignity that had been denied to him just hours earlier. The Royal Beacon Hotel would never be the same again, not just because of its new owner, but because of the lesson he brought with him. A lesson in humility, fairness, and the quiet strength of rising above prejudice. A hush fell over the lobby as Shaq's calm but powerful words echoed through the space. Marissa's face turned pale, her eyes widening in shock. She opened her mouth to speak, but only managed to stammer, You're the owner?" Around them, the other staff and a few guests stopped in their tracks, their expressions a mix of curiosity and confusion. The weight of Shaq's presence and his announcement settled over the room. Shaq nodded, his towering frame exuding quiet authority. "Yes," he said, his voice steady but firm. "As of this morning, I have completed the acquisition of this hotel." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Last night I came here to check in, but you told me there were no rooms available, even though there clearly were." The words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. His tone never rose, never wavered into anger, but the gravity of his statement was undeniable. Marissa's mind raced as panic gripped her. Her cheeks flushed with heat, and she fumbled for an explanation. "I apologize," she stuttered, her voice trembling. "I thought we were fully booked." Shaq didn't flinch. His gaze remained fixed on her, unyielding yet calm. "I watched you give a room to a couple right after me," he said, his tone even but unwavering. "Don't pretend you didn't." Marissa's lips quivered, her face a mix of fear and regret. She knew there was no excuse she could give that wouldn't expose her bias. Lying would only make things worse, and the truth was undeniable. Before she could respond further, the hotel manager, Joel, emerged from the back office. He had been hearing whispers all morning about the hotel's sudden change in ownership, But he hadn't anticipated this scene. His sharp suit and polished demeanor were meant to exude authority, but now his confidence faltered as he approached Shaq. "Mr. O'Neal," Joel began, his voice slick with forced charm, "I'm sure this is all just a misunderstanding. We didn't know it was you." Shaq's gaze shifted to Joel, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried a weight that silenced everyone. "So, if you had known who I was, you would have treated me differently?" he asked, his words cutting like a blade. Joel's confident facade crumbled under Shaq's calm but piercing question. He swallowed hard, searching for the right words but finding none. "That," Shaq continued, his voice steady, "is the problem. You judge people based on their appearance and their perceived status, not on their worth as human beings." Joel's face flushed and his throat tightened. For years, he had managed the hotel with a specific clientele in mind, enforcing an unspoken but rigid standard of exclusivity. Now, standing before the new owner, he realized just how precarious his position had become. The lobby was silent, the tension thick in the air. Staff and guests alike watched the scene unfold, the weight of Shaq's words challenging the very foundation of how the hotel had been run. This was no ordinary confrontation. It was a moment of reckoning, one that would reshape the Royal Beacon Hotel and the people who worked there. Shaq took a deep breath, his voice carrying across the hushed lobby as he addressed everyone present. "I won't tolerate discrimination in my hotel," he said firmly, his gaze moving over the staff and guests. "Every guest deserves respect, regardless of their skin color, clothing, or background." His eyes rested on Marissa, who was still visibly shaken. "Last night you refused me service," he continued, his tone steady but not harsh. "This morning I come to you as the owner, not to punish without reason, but to ensure that things are set right." Marissa felt her knees weaken. She had braced herself for immediate dismissal, expecting to lose her job on the spot. But Shaq's next words took her by surprise. "I believe in second chances," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "If you're willing to learn, to treat every person who walks through these doors with fairness and respect, you can stay. But if you're not, this isn't the place for you." Tears welled in Marissa's eyes, a mix of shame and relief. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I'm sorry. I'll change." She nodded, her expression earnest and contrite. Shaq studied her for a moment before giving a slight nod, satisfied for now. Then, he turned his attention to Joel, the hotel manager. "As for the management," Shaq said, his voice firm, "there will be changes. You, along with the entire staff, will undergo training on bias, inclusivity, and customer relations. This hotel will no longer be a place of exclusion. It will stand as a symbol of fairness and inclusivity." Joel nodded quickly, his face a mix of nervousness and relief. He was grateful to still have his position, even if it came with a sharp wake-up call. Around the lobby, the staff watched silently. Some looked on with admiration for Shaq's leadership, while others averted their eyes, their expressions tinged with shame. The guests who witnessed the exchange felt a quiet sense of justice. They murmured among themselves, impressed by how the situation had been handled and hopeful for the change Shaq had promised. That afternoon, Shaq gathered the entire staff in a spacious conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Standing at the head of the room, he shared his vision for the Royal Beacon Hotel. "This will be a place where every guest feels welcome," he began, his voice clear and passionate, "where the service we provide is rooted in kindness, not based on stereotypes or assumptions. We will treat every person with dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from." He outlined plans for mandatory training sessions, revised policies to ensure inclusivity, and initiatives to engage with the local community. His vision extended beyond the walls of the hotel. It was about creating a culture of respect and understanding. "My success in basketball taught me valuable lessons," Shaq said, looking around the room. "Teamwork, humility, and fairness. Those values helped me thrive on the court, and now we're going to apply them here. Together, we'll build something better." The employees listened intently. Some looked relieved, especially those who had felt uncomfortable with the biases that had previously been the norm. Others nodded in agreement, grateful for the chance to align with a higher standard of service and integrity. As the meeting ended, a renewed sense of purpose filled the room. The Royal Beacon Hotel was no longer just a luxurious destination. It was becoming a symbol of progress, led by a man who believed in fairness, second chances, and the power of positive change. Not everyone adjusted to the changes with ease. While some employees felt relieved and inspired, others were nervous, unsure how to adapt to the new expectations. But Shaq's calm yet firm authority left no room for doubt. This was the new normal, and there was no turning back. Over the following weeks, transformations swept through the Royal Beacon Hotel. The lobby, once subtly designed to project exclusivity, underwent a thoughtful makeover. Its elitist branding softened, replaced with warm, inviting touches that radiated inclusivity. Training sessions led by professionals specializing in diversity and hospitality became a cornerstone of the hotel's new culture. These sessions challenged staff to confront their biases, intentional or not, and reflect on how they treated guests. Marissa, still determined to make amends for her past behavior, attended every session with unwavering dedication. She learned about unconscious bias, the value of equality, and the importance of welcoming every guest with genuine warmth and respect. Slowly but surely, her mindset began to shift. Outside the hotel, news of Shaq's ownership spread quickly. People were intrigued, not because of a flashy publicity stunt, but because of the authenticity of his mission. Journalists clamored for interviews, eager to hear his perspective. But Shaq stayed quiet, choosing to let actions speak louder than words. Deeds, not headlines, he often reminded his team. New guests began to arrive. Some were drawn by curiosity, wanting to experience the hotel owned by the basketball legend they admired. Others were travelers from diverse backgrounds, finally feeling comfortable enough to book a stay at a place that promised fairness and respect. The change was palpable. Staff greeted every guest with genuine smiles, no longer sizing them up based on their attire or perceived social status. The transformation wasn't just about appearances, it was a cultural shift that redefined the very essence of the Royal Beacon Hotel. One late afternoon, Shaq stood quietly in the lobby, observing the fruits of his vision. He watched as Marissa welcomed a family checking in. The parents were casually dressed, and their children, excited and giggling, ran around the lobby. Marissa greeted them warmly, her demeanor sincere and gracious. There was no hesitation, no subtle judgment, only genuine hospitality. After the family headed to the elevator, Shaq approached Marissa. She turned toward him, her smile free from the tension it once carried. "Mr. O'Neal," she began, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I just wanted to thank you. Thank you for giving me a second chance. I see things so differently now." Shaq nodded, his expression kind but proud. Resting a large hand gently on the counter, he replied, "I knew you could learn. That's what this place is about now, learning, growing, and treating people right." Marissa's eyes shimmered with gratitude. The painful memory of her initial prejudice had turned into a powerful lesson, one that made her not only a better employee, but a better person. As the evening wore on, Joel, the manager, passed by Shaq. He offered a respectful nod, an acknowledgement of how much he too had grown. While he had once clung to outdated practices, Joel now worked diligently to meet the new standards of fairness and inclusivity set by Shaq. Under Shaq's leadership, the Royal Beacon Hotel was no longer just a place for luxury. It had become a beacon of change, a space where everyone was treated with the respect and dignity they deserved. Shaq paused as Joel walked past, his sharp eyes taking in the manager's evident effort and the positive changes within the hotel. "Joel," he said, stopping him with a nod of approval. "The hotel's booked solid. Next month's reservations are filling up fast. Looks like business is booming." Joel's face lit up with a mix of relief and pride. "Thank you, sir," he replied. "It's all thanks to your vision. The team has embraced it fully." Shaq offered a contented sigh. "Good work keeping everything running smoothly," he said, patting Joel lightly on the shoulder. The Royal Beacon Hotel was thriving, not because it clung to an air of exclusivity, but because it had become a place that welcomed everyone. Profits had risen steadily, but that wasn't the only measure of success. Staff morale had improved significantly, and guests regularly left glowing reviews praising the warm and inclusive environment. The hotel's old reputation of elitist snobbery was fading into the past, replaced by one of genuine hospitality and respect. A few nights later, Shaq strolled leisurely through the lobby, taking in the vibrant yet serene atmosphere. Staff moved efficiently, their smiles unforced and their interactions sincere. The once tense energy had transformed into a feeling of unity and purpose. As he glanced toward the front desk, Shaq noticed an older black couple checking in. They looked tired from their journey, dressed in plain clothes that spoke of comfort over formality. He lingered, watching closely as a newly hired receptionist greeted them with a warm smile. The young man handled their check-in smoothly, chatting with them kindly and handing over their room keys without hesitation. The couple exchanged a surprised but pleased look, clearly touched by the effortless kindness they were shown. Shaq felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him. This small moment, a simple, dignified interaction, was proof that his efforts were paying off. This, Shaq thought, a smile spreading across his face, is what it's all about. It wasn't just about transforming a hotel or boosting profits. It was about fostering a culture of respect and equality, where every guest, no matter who they were, felt valued. Before leaving the hotel that evening, Shaq took one last look around the lobby. It was bustling with life, filled with people from all walks of life, families, solo travelers, and professionals, all enjoying the welcoming atmosphere he had worked so hard to create. With a sense of fulfillment, he walked out into the cool night, knowing that the Royal Beacon Hotel was no longer just a business. It had become a symbol of what was possible when fairness, inclusivity, and compassion were placed at the heart of hospitality. Shaq sat back in the lounge, a glass of mineral water in his hand, his gaze sweeping across the transformed hotel lobby. The soft hum of conversations and the sight of guests of all backgrounds moving freely through the space filled him with quiet pride. His thoughts drifted back to that first night when he had walked through those very doors and been turned away. He recalled the sting of disappointment, the cold dismissal he had received. But now, that memory felt distant, almost like it had happened to someone else. It was overshadowed by what the hotel had become, a place that no longer judged people by appearances, but welcomed them with open arms. For Shaq, it wasn't just about fixing a wrong. It was about creating a legacy that went beyond basketball, fame, or business. It was about doing what was right. The next morning, as Shaq prepared for another busy day, a receptionist approached him with a small envelope. "This came for you, Mr. O'Neal," they said with a smile. The guest didn't leave a name. Curious, Shaq opened the envelope to find a simple card inside. The message, written in neat handwriting, read, "Thank you for making this a place where I feel welcome. It means more than you know." Shaq stared at the card, his heart warmed by the quiet acknowledgement. He didn't need flashy headlines, press conferences, or public praise. This small, anonymous gesture was enough to reassure him that he had made the right decision. It was proof that the changes he had implemented were making a real difference in people's lives. Later that morning, as he walked through the lobby one last time before heading to a meeting, Shaq greeted staff members by name, pausing to chat with them briefly. Maria, a housekeeper, mentioned with a smile how guests often complimented the friendly atmosphere. Tom, the young bellhop, shared that he now felt genuinely proud to work at the Royal Beacon. Each conversation, though brief, reaffirmed the transformation. This wasn't just a workplace anymore, it was a community where everyone, staff and guests alike, felt valued. As Shaq stepped out onto the bustling street, the morning sunlight caught the gleaming glass doors behind him. The Royal Beacon Hotel stood proudly, changed for the better. What had once been a personal slight had become a catalyst for reform, a spark that ignited a story of inclusion and growth. Shaq understood something profound that day. True power wasn't about wealth or fame alone, it was about how one used influence to uplift others and expand perspectives. By taking a stand and making the Royal Beacon a place of equality and respect, he had done more than fix a problem. He had built something enduring. As he disappeared into the city's lively morning, the hotel remained behind, a glowing symbol of transformation. It was proof that people could change, environments could evolve, and that justice, served quietly but firmly, could leave a lasting impact. What a journey, right? From rejection to revolution, Shaquille O'Neal didn't just change the ownership of the Royal Beacon Hotel, he changed its entire culture. His story proves that true leadership goes beyond fame and wealth. It's about respect, fairness, and making a difference where it counts. What do you think about Shaq's decision to turn his experience into a force for positive change? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for watching.